This is first step in learning stress reduction. If you do not understand this, there's no point in even talking about stress relief. Now that we are well into the 21st century, we often hear people around us complaining, "The stress is really getting to me." The phrase "not understanding this" mentioned at the start of this video refers precisely to not understanding stress. More specifically, it encompasses the concept and fundamental characteristics of stress. Although this may seem like a simple topic, it has a significant impact on the success or failure of our understanding, comprehension, and practical application of scientific stress management. Today, we are going to clarify this issue once and for all, laying the foundations for you to engage with, learn about, and practice scientific stress management. First of all, I would like to remind you not to be put off by the somewhat academic tone of this video. It is precisely this academic tone that demonstrates the video's rigorous scientific rigor and practical value. Right then, without further ado, let us get down to business. 1. The origin of the concept of stress. The English word stress derives from the Latin stringer, meaning to tighten or to compress. In the 1650s, it acquired the scientific definition of a force acting perpendicular to a surface, and began to establish its place in physics. Today, in an era of rapid socio-economic development and ever-evolving science and technology, many people complain of being plagued by various forms of stress. Countless individuals have consequently developed mental health issues, or have fallen ill, and some have even died as a result, primarily through suicide. It is precisely because of the far-reaching impact of stress on human mental health, and the diagnosis and treatment of illness, that the term stress has now become a buzzword in modern society. So, what exactly is stress? The transition of stress from a term in physics to one used in the life sciences and psychology is largely attributable to the work of the following three scientific pioneers. The first was the French physiologist Claude Bernard. In 1865, he proposed the concept of the internal environment, pointing out that the stability of an organism's internal environment is key to its survival, independent of the external environment. This laid the physiological foundation for the subsequent understanding of how stress disrupts the body. The second was the American physiologist Walter Cannon. During the 1920s and 1930s, he coined the term homeostasis to describe the body's self-regulatory mechanisms for maintaining internal balance. Cannon was the first to introduce the term stress into the field of physiology, defining it as a disruption of internal balance caused by external factors. At the same time, he described the fight-or-flight response that the body produces when this balance is threatened. The third figure was Hans Selye, a Hungarian-born Canadian physician, who is hailed as the father of modern stress research. In 1936, he published a short article in Nature reporting that animals exhibited similar physiological responses, such as adrenal enlargement and gastric ulcers, to various harmful stimuli. Selye defined stress as the nonspecific response of the body to any demand placed upon it. He summarized this response pattern as the General Adaptation Syndrome (GAS), comprising 3 stages: alarm, resistance, and exhaustion. He also distinguished between negative stress distress and positive stress eustress, pointing out that stress is not always harmful. Over the course of his life, he published 1,700 scientific papers and authored 40 books. In 2005, Linden pointed out that stress is both a psychological and a physiological response triggered by real or perceived threats. This response necessitates taking some form of action or seeking a solution. Stress affects 3 levels: cognitive, behavioral, and biological. If it persists and becomes chronic, it can have significant adverse effects on health. In 2006, Schuler proposed that stress is, in essence, a pre-programmed survival mechanism designed to heighten one's internal perception of potential danger and mobilize all the body's resources into a state of high alert. Put simply, this is the experiential response to the perception of a threat. In his 2017 book Stress Management and Prevention, David D. Chen argues that stress is a psychological and physiological response to a perceived threat, whether that threat stems from imagination, exaggeration, or actual danger. Where the threat cannot be eliminated or significantly reduced, it can have serious consequences for an individual's physiological, psychological, emotional, interpersonal, and mental functioning. In a new book published in 2026, Alan Elkins states that stress refers to the psychological state that arises when one believes they are unable to cope effectively with a threatening situation. If one regards an event or situation as merely a minor challenge, they will typically experience only mild stress. However, if it is perceived as threatening or overwhelming, it is likely to result in significant stress. In 1978, Dr. Hans Selye, together with his student Dr. Paul Roche and others, founded a nonprofit organization, the American Institute of Stress. Today, a clear definition of stress can be found on the Institute's official website. Stress is the body's nonspecific response to any demand, whether pleasant or unpleasant. Although definitions of stress vary, common definitions include physical, mental, or emotional tension or strain, and a state or feeling experienced when an individual perceives external demands to exceed their available personal and social resources. Most people associate stress with suffering, that is, the negative kind of stress that causes discomfort and harm. However, there is also a positive form of stress known as eustress, which helps to enhance work performance. For example, the stress experienced whilst preparing for a job interview can stimulate focus and motivation, whereas being completely overwhelmed at work can reduce productivity. Stress is not merely an emotional experience. It also encompasses 3 dimensions: biological, psychological, and sociological. The biological dimension refers to the body's physiological response to stress. The psychological dimension refers to how the brain processes and regulates stress. And the sociological dimension refers to how interpersonal relationships and the environment influence an individual's stress response. 2. What are the fundamental characteristics of stress? Based on a clear understanding of the concept of stress, a literature review and analysis reveal its fundamental characteristics. These characteristics are of great significance to human understanding of stress and stress relief strategies. 1. As human beings, Each individual is subjected to a single stressor or a combination of stressors. Put simply, everyone is exposed to stressors. 2. For an individual, whether they experience a single stressor or a combination of stressors may be subject to random factors, but is also closely related to the strength of their intrinsic stress response capacity, their psychological and emotional state, and their personality traits. 3. Stress can be categorized into positive stress and negative stress. The former has a positive impact on the body's physiological and psychological functions, whilst the latter has a negative impact. Generally speaking, negative stress is more common and occurs in greater variety than positive stress. 4. The negative stressors that may cause harm to human health are complex and diverse. Stress at the individual level is linked to specific triggers, which include situations, emotional fluctuations, or events that frequently occur in daily life, such as health problems, a difficult boss, time constraints, financial difficulties, relationship problems, the death of a loved one, job insecurity, or a poor Wi-Fi signal. Stress at the population level has a much broader scope of impact. It may affect entire communities, cities, or even entire nations. Examples include floods and hurricanes, earthquakes, economic recessions, inflation, war, political unrest, climate change, school shootings, crises in the healthcare system, pandemics, famine, and criminal activity. 5. Whether negative stressors cause harm to the human body depends on the interaction of factors such as the intensity and duration of the stress, as well as the individual's cognitive ability, psychological state, the efficiency and quality of emotional regulation, psychological resilience, personality traits, and the availability of resources. 6. Provided that an individual possesses high cognitive ability, is in a sound psychological and emotional state, has strong psychological resilience, exhibits favorable personality traits, and has access to an adequate supply of resources, the likelihood and severity of harm to the human body caused by negative stressors are relatively low. 7. In individuals with low cognitive ability, a poor psychological and emotional state, psychological or physiological illnesses, low psychological resilience, unfavorable personality traits, and a lack of adequate resources, the likelihood and severity of harm to the body caused by negative stressors are higher. 8. The harm caused to the human body by certain forms of negative stress can be prevented. 9. Harm caused by negative stress that has been resolved may recur under certain specific conditions. 10. Certain stress reduction techniques may partially or completely prevent the harm caused to the human body by certain forms of negative stress. Three. The importance of understanding the concept and fundamental characteristics of stress. 1. Understanding the concept and fundamental characteristics of stress will help you gain a general understanding of the overarching theories of scientific stress management. 2. Understanding the concept and fundamental characteristics of stress will help you realize clearly that learning and practicing scientific stress management requires a certain amount of time and effort and cannot be achieved overnight. 3. Once you have grasped the concept and fundamental characteristics of stress, it will be much easier for you to master the overarching principles of scientific stress management, thereby reducing the likelihood of making mistakes during this process. 4. Once you have grasped the concept and fundamental characteristics of stress, you will have laid a solid foundation for the subsequent systematic study of scientific stress management theory and the mastery and practice of various related stress reduction techniques. In summary, we have explained the concept and fundamental characteristics of stress in detail, and clearly highlighted the importance of understanding them, which is precisely the promise we made to you at the start of this video. We hope you will successfully master the content of this video, and that our commitment will help you achieve success in your future studies and in practicing scientific stress management. Of course, over the coming weeks, we will continue to share more in-depth, practical and actionable knowledge, techniques and methods on this topic. Stay tuned.